Greetings from Alefgard, where I'm going to be sharing a biblical truth through the game Dragon Warrior. Now, a little background info. This game was originally released as Dragon Quest in Japan. A couple of years later, it came to the United States through the original NES, and they changed it to Dragon Warrior. Apparently, there was some copyright infringement situation, so they had to change the name. Later games in the series, they synced it up and it became known as Dragon Quest in both the US and Japan. But to me, this original game was always known as Dragon Warrior, and it was the first RPG I ever played. And the genre was so new that I remember back when I was a kid, I had a subscription to Nintendo Power, and they featured Dragon Warrior, and they pretty much had to explain what an RPG was because it was so new at the time. But so, it really excited me. I got a copy of it, and the RPG genre quickly became my favorite. And so I wanted to share a little bit about the game. You start off, you're a warrior, and you find yourself in a castle talking to King Lorik. And he's telling you the problems that are plaguing the country known as Alefgard. And it's the typical traditional RPG problems. There's an evil dragon lord that needs to be defeated, peace needs to be restored to the land, and of course a princess needs to be saved. So after you're finished talking to him, you leave the castle and you get your first glimpse of the overworld screen, and where you see the castle that you just left. A few paces to the east is the first town that you go to pick up some equipment. But to the south there's a river, and on the other side of the river you see another castle nestled away in a swamp, and this other castle is where the Dragon Lord is, where you have to go to defeat him to finish the game. And I love that little snapshot where as you're starting off the game, you can see where you need to go to end the game. You see what your ultimate goal is. And I know through whatever you're doing, through be a hobby, through a career, they always tell you always want to keep the end goal in sight. So this game does a brilliant job of giving you what that end goal is right from the beginning. And I wanted to share some verses in the Bible where it kind of explains the importance of this. And the first one I wanted to talk about was Hebrews chapter 12. The first verse says, "Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." This verse, it talks about the analogy of a race. Obviously, from the time you start the race, what you're shooting for. You're shooting for the finish line. And you're talking about the race like your life. It's not a sprint so much as it is a marathon. You have to endure. You have to have perseverance, as the verse says. And an RPG like Dragon Warrior is the same thing. This is not something that you're not gonna finish this race in a few hours. With Dragon Warrior, there's so many fights. It's really a grind fest. You just have to fight monster over monster to have any chance of success, and you have to persevere if you want to beat the game. And our life is the same way. You have to just, no matter what you're going through in your life, you have to keep that finish line, what your goals are, keep that in your mind. And then the Bible also talks about what happens when you don't do that. What happens when you forget what your goal is? You lose where the finish line is. So Galatians 5:7 says, "You were running a good race. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth?" So here again, the analogy of a race, and you were doing well, and then something happened, and that's so easy. You get distracted, you forget the importance of what you were trying for. Something else comes along, and you kind of lose your way. It can happen so easily. The longer the race, the more likely it is to happen. And again, you're talking about a marathon like your life. It can happen. And that's why it's just so important to know at all times where the finish line is, what your goal is. So 2 Timothy 4, chapter 4, verse 7, it says, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." So here's an example. Again, finishing the race, keeping that finish line in your line of sight at all times, and good things happen when you do. So again, Dragon Warrior, like I said, this is more of a marathon. And even though that opening screen, you can see where you need to go, it's not so easy to get there. You can't swim across the river. You have to pretty much traverse the whole of the world map to get the select items that you need to be able to access that final castle. And you have to go through lots of fights to be able to be strong enough to defeat the Dragon Lord. This isn't Mario where you can just warp to World 8 and then just take on the end guy like that. This is, it's a long process, just like the race that the Bible speaks of. And the importance of keeping your goals in mind. It's just really important. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much for listening. And next time I will be in the deep recesses of hell talking about Dante's Inferno. Thanks, and talk to you later.